Hi all. It's good to be here. Thank you for this lovely introduction, Babette. So I work at Tilburg University. I'm an assistant professor there. My favorite topic to study is recruitment and selection. I also have many other topics, and one of them will come up here as well, and that is volunteering. So we know that volunteer organizations are quite struggling. Is anybody here a recruiter for a volunteering organization or not-for-profit? Excellent, thank you for being here. That's great. So this talk might especially resonate with you then. But I also decided on how to frame this for everybody so that it also makes sense for if you're working for a more commercial organization. Now, volunteer numbers are decreasing across the globe. This was something that I just wanted to share, but also at the moment, volunteers are not always returning to the organizations since they left for COVID. So volunteer organizations are really looking to for ways to increase their workforce again. And volunteer workers, they're slightly different from employees, right? We don't pay them, obviously, but also volunteer workers less often have contractual obligations to show up or a resignation period. Oftentimes what we see is that volunteers just stop showing up, and that means they've quit. Also, volunteers usually have identify even more with the mission of an organization. So there's a really strong sense of idealism. So these are some things to keep in mind as we talk about the recruitment of volunteers. And I also want to say that I worked together on this research with a team. And I did this when I was in Australia a few years ago. I worked together with Patrick Dunlop, Marilyn Gagne, John Cordery, and Christine Sue. These are phenomenal researchers, and they are all still in Australia. I was working at Curtin University and UWA at the time, and we did this research together with scouts. Who has been in scouting? Anybody? I was. All right. Who has a very strong view on what it would be to be a scout? So do you have an idea of or a stereotype of scouts? No? Yeah, I see you nodding. Thank you for that. So usually scouting is perceived as to be slightly dorky. So Girl Scouts sell cookies door to door, and you go and do fun activities in the woods. But that's generally the stereotype. And we did this research together with Scouting. It was a really amazing opportunity. And Scouting came to us and they said, we have a retention problem, and we think that is because we're recruiting the wrong people. And why is this still a problem, retention and recruitment for a volunteer organization? Even though you don't pay your people, it's still a lot of costs are involved with upskilling them. So with Scouts, you need to go through at least 2 weeks of training before you can start doing fun activities with the kids. In terms of volunteering, that means that a volunteer wouldn't be able to work for 2 months, and then they would have to do a training a full day, every workday week, right? So there's a lot of time. It takes a lot of time before you get your people ready. And that also means that other volunteers are investing in upskilling these people. So the costs are still substantial, especially for these resource-deprived organizations. So they said, we want better people who fit with our organization and hopefully keep them longer. And the problem they also identified is sometimes they brought in people who didn't fit, but those people didn't leave. And they created a toxic environment in a Scouts group. Now, we then said, all right, so maybe targeted recruitment could be the solution because personnel selection approaches don't work with volunteers. If you want to raise your hand, you say, I want to volunteer for this organization. And then the organization says, yeah, sure. Why don't you fill in this cognitive ability test and this personality inventory, and we'll do a full interview, and then we'll tell you if you fit with us. Then people are like, no, well, thank you, I'll go to the other shop over there and volunteer there. So personnel selection usually deters people from joining volunteering organizations, and we thought if we just send the right messages, maybe we'll attract the right people, and then you improve the fit overall. But who we wanted to target and how we target them, that were things that we still had to figure out. And then we turned to the literature, the academic literature, because we work at universities. We thought, surely somebody must have thought of an answer. Well, no, not really. So targeted recruitment is completely underexplored in academia. Whereas in practice, I know that there are a lot of tools available to help you with targeted recruitment, or how to optimize job advertisements, for example. And these all sound very convincing on how they work and the possible results. We only found some evidence in marketing research that people really figured out that targeted messages could really work on attracting certain types of people to buy certain products. But those effects were relatively small. Now, we worked together with Scouts on developing a targeted recruitment campaign. And on the launch day, they played this video that I'm now going to show you for a little bit, just to introduce the project.
Welcome to LeaderBuild, a new system for getting more leaders. LeaderBuild is a scripted presentation for parents and other potential volunteers, a program in a box to share Scouting with more adults. Over the years, Scout groups have tried the traditional methods of recruiting leaders. These include desperation and blackmail. LeaderBuild is different. LeaderBuild uses smart messages to get the right people to become leaders. It's a collaboration between Scouts Australia, UWA, and Curtin University. The ideas behind LeaderBuild are simple. 1. We ask people. Very few people actually volunteer to be leaders. Most leaders were asked by someone. So let's ask more people more often. 2. We ask people effectively. LeaderBuild makes it easier to ask people to sign up as leaders, with consistent messages about the benefits of Scouting for young people and adults. 3. It's scientific. We've worked with UWA to identify the best leaders, leaders who stay longer, and the messages that attract these people. Thousands of Scouting and non-Scouting people have been surveyed, and we've chosen the most effective messages to attract the right people. 4. Safety in numbers. It's less threatening when people volunteer at the same time, so we want to recruit in bulk. 5. Economy of scale. It's more efficient to induct and train multiple new leaders at the same time, and your group builds into a stronger team as your new leaders grow together. 6. We only ask volunteers to sign up for 1 year. Sporting teams ask parents to volunteer for a single season. With LeaderBuild, we ask parents to sign up to be a leader for 1 year. If they enjoy it, they'll stay. And if not, they were probably going to leave anyway. There are 3 parts to LeaderBuild. Okay, I'm going to keep it at that. So this was our introduction, and you can also see how they used the branding of universities to sell the whole campaign, right? They said it's scientific. It's true, we worked on this, although at that point we hadn't really proven the concept yet. We had just developed the concept. But on the other, so we introduced the LeaderBuild as a package, a recruitment package, to Scouts, and this was in front of a big hall with hundreds of volunteers, trying to convince them to start using this. And in the end, a lot of people took this product up, and then a huge recruitment campaign developed out of this. Now I want to talk about how did we get to this point, like how did we get to launch day? And that took us a lot of planning and then development of the content, etc. So we decided, when Scouts came to us and said, can you help us solve this, to descend from our ivory tower and to try and apply the things that we learned in the universities in real practice. And that was a really exciting journey for us, also exciting for Scouts. Sometimes we had to really sit down together and nut it out, make sure that we were on the same page. But I found this probably one of the more inspiring projects that I worked on in my career. Now, with Scouts, it's important to know the context first, right? Who are these volunteers? So I want to share that with you first. Now, Scouting volunteers are the adults who do the fun things with kids. And we want more of them. We call these people leader of youth or adult volunteers. Scouting has a few names for them, but when I say leader of youth, I don't mean a manager. So these are the people who lead the youth. And then we also have leaders of adults. Those are other leaders.
They're the managers of scout groups. Now, these leaders of youth, they deliver the youth programs, obviously, but they do many other things too. So they have a huge administrative load, where they need to check all kinds of safety issues, and it's meticulous work. You need to also contact the parents and be a clear communicator. And if you've ever been to a primary school where parents give a teacher grief because their kid is not getting this opportunity or that opportunity, that's the exact same issue that Scouts leaders often also have to deal with. So they need to be very good communicators with adults, manage a lot of resources, do a lot of administration, and then do these activities with the kids too. Altogether, what we saw is that most volunteers on average spend about 10 hours a week on their volunteering, which is a lot, on top of their day jobs, right? So they're very engaged and involved individuals. Now, knowing the profile or the job that we wanted to recruit people for, we now wanted to figure out who would fit best with this job. And for that, we did a bunch of interviews, more than 70 interviews, and we surveyed a lot of people. So we distributed questionnaires. And in the interviews, we first got a few responses to illustrate how desperate they were for getting more people. So they said things like, we want to get as many people as we want, we just need bums on seats, so give us warm bodies, anyone with a pulse will do. And then somebody actually raised their hand in a meeting and said, actually forget that, a pulse is optional, just a body. This is how desperate they were. But this is not recruitment for fit, right? You just take anybody, even if they might not be a person who could do fun activities with kids. And then you get that problem of people then dropping out again quite quickly because you coerce them into joining you. Also what we found out is that recruitment was very chaotic. Every group did their own thing. Some groups were far more successful than other groups. Parents could sometimes start to volunteer to let their kid jump the queue and become a youth member more quickly if there was a queue in the group, which is also a form of coercion. Nobody exactly knew what would make a good volunteer. And most importantly, these volunteers were not recruiters. So they felt like a salesperson and they felt uncomfortable in the role on how do I approach a person with this big question of, would you like to spend 10 hours a week on a volunteering role? So they wanted some kit, something to help them. And then we approached this from a personality perspective. I am not going to bore you with the personality theory, but in the end we found out that these 3 traits were most important for a good fit with Scouts and with this role in Scouting. And I'm going to talk you through how we got there. So extraversion is being outgoing, having a lot of social energy. Agreeableness is being reasonably flexible with other people, being a nice person. And conscientiousness is being diligent, hardworking, and precise. And these, we figured out that these traits were important for Scouting. And I'll show you how we figured that out. So first, we ran annual engagement surveys where we sent a survey to thousands and thousands of volunteers. And based on those responses, and then looking at the responses on a personality questionnaire that we gave them, and then relating it to retention later, we noticed that people who were high on extroversion, agreeableness, and conscientiousness were more likely to stay. And that indicates that they are probably a better fit. And then we also asked Scout volunteers to indicate to us what is the ideal volunteer. And we compared that, so the profile of the ideal volunteer, to the profile of the current volunteers. What we found is this, showing in this graph, where the black bars are the general population, that's just there for fun. But the green bar was the current population, and the blue bar was how the Scouts envisioned the ideal volunteer would look like. And what we noticed is that, especially for extroversion and agreeableness, the typical volunteer was a bit lower than the ideal volunteer. So that reaffirmed our idea that these traits were especially important, and conscientiousness we just kept in the mix because it was important for retention. So we identified these 3 traits that we wanted to focus on, right? And now to bring this back to the bigger picture, this is for us was also an academic exercise of targeted recruitment where we thought, right, we just need targets, but you can do this with any other competency or characteristic that you would have with for a job, as a requirement for a job, or just something you're interested in as an organization. So bear that in mind as I walk you through this. Like, I'm describing some principles that can be applied to other topics as well, not just personality. Now, we then asked Scouts Victoria to interview volunteers. They were already setting up a recruitment campaign, and this coincided really nicely. And we asked them, can you please interview some volunteers with these questions? So what does it take to be an effective leader of youth? And why do you like being a leader of youth? And we just let people give us free text. Scouts recorded it, gave us 8 hours of footage. I went through it and I identified all the quotes in that footage that were just natural quotes that we thought related to these 3 traits that would then target these 3 traits. For example, and we had demand-based quotes, opportunity-like quotes, so describing what is necessary to be a good volunteer and what do you get out of being a good volunteer. One extraversion quote was, I think being fun, being engaged, being a great communicator is an important part of it. So that signals these extraversion things are important to be an effective volunteer. The opportunity-based quote, through scouting, I've learned a lot of organizational skills. That signals, all right, so you can develop these things that conscientious people usually have. These opportunities tend to also attract people that already have these skills. So we figured this would also work. So we gathered about 80 quotes, natural quotes from the footage. We then gave these quotes to a panel. And one volunteer panel, and that judged how accurate the quotes were. And the quotes that were deemed, about 6 or 7, were deemed inaccurate, we just removed, because we wanted to give a realistic job preview. And every quote that was liked, we also kept. Then from a community panel, we also figured out which quotes were liked. We kept those quotes, and we checked if the quotes that we had also resonated with the people who scored high on these traits with a community panel. So now we had these quotes, these isolated quotes that were attractive and resonated with people high on the traits that we wanted to target. And that's when we started to build our materials for the campaign. So we used these quotes and we started to insert them in posters. And you can see this is also in the spirit of scouting. These recruitment posters are a little bit dorky in a good way. And they would hang these up in their halls when they were running the recruitment meetings. We also developed a brochure. I'm going to highlight some text here. So the above text in the brochure, you get to meet such a diverse group of people, etc. Those are all the opportunity-like quotes. And then below is more, well, it already says that in the header, what does it take to be a leader of youth? The demand-based quotes. So what do you need to bring? And these were all targeting these personality traits. And on top of that, we also developed a video that I'll now play for you for a bit. And you will see that it's filled with these quotes that we had. And that the Scouts has a really amazing video editing team.
It's so hard to describe what it is about Scouting that makes it so fun.
Scouting is one big family. It doesn't matter where your kids step in the door, they're welcome, and every Scout leader is a role model for those children, whether they're your children or someone else's children.
Remember, it's got to be quick, don't think too long. You maybe want to hold on to one end yourself.
The best Scout troops are the ones that have a good team of adult leaders assisting each other and working together to build a program and run the nights and activities.
Great leaders are driven, they're passionate, they're hardworking.
They're energetic, they have some great ideas, they're organised.
Being fun, being engaged, Being a great communicator, I think, is an important part of it.
Most of the best leaders are those that are open, friendly and trusting.
Willing to hear those quotes.
Others, and of course a tow bar.
I don't ask my cubs to do anything that I wouldn't do, which means I'm doing all sorts of crazy things, and you have a blast.
The ideal scout leader is someone who's happy to give something they've not done before a go.
We do have a lot of laughs doing it with a peer squad behind me.
Oh no, it's not coming out. So what are we going to do?
Loving the opportunity to teach kids something and using any opportunity to teach the kids something is important for a leader.
That's it.
I love the fact that the youth can experience so many different activities and challenges in a safe environment that encourages them to do their best.
Scouts gives you a lot of information, gives you a lot of training. It takes you through all the steps, especially the online training part of it.
I'm in a management position at the moment at work because of the training that I've received at Scouts.
Professionally, I'm in a leadership position, and there's a lot of transferable skills between the role that I play in Scouting and the role that I play at work.
We actually use a modified version of the patrol system at work. Some of my employees don't know they're operating under the Scout system, but it really works well.
Oh, bad luck.
Through my experience in Scouting, I'm now a much better communicator at work.
Hey!
But also through Scouting, I've learned a lot of organisational skills that allow me to implement programs for kids of over 100 at any one time.
One of the other benefits of training as an adult is that it gives the parents of the children that you're leading a confidence that you're up to date with the latest child safety issues and that you really do know what you're doing.
I've become a better parent as a result of being a leader.
Now you're pointing east.
I find I'm more relaxed and I'm willing to let the kids find their own path.
I think it's made me appreciate my kids and what they can do, what they can achieve.
I do this for my children, and I don't mind if I have to take 15 children with me because I'm doing it with my kids and they're getting a great benefit out of it.
The children are such great teachers. They are so open to possibilities that you've got to step back and go, hey, this is amazing. I can do this too.
I get to do something different every second, third weekend with the Scouts, and I love it as much as they am. I'm a big kid at heart.
It doesn't matter where you go. There's always someone you can connect with in Scouting.
I've made some great friends in Scouting that I'll have for the rest of my life. I was having a coffee with one of them recently and we were joking that we probably wouldn't give each other the time of the day if it wasn't Scouting. We come from such different backgrounds.
It's fantastic to see the cubs as they move from cubs to Scouts to venturers, how they grow, how they develop, and it's very rewarding that you've had a little bit of an influence on the way they are and the way they've turned out.
That's the challenge to you guys.
And it is a real privilege that you get invited into their lives every week and beyond. It's where else can you get that opportunity or that experience? It's quite unique.
And have so much fun doing it.
So I showed this video after we made it.
You are, what you do in life, Scouting is for you. Scouting will inspire you to become a great person, but it will also challenge you to work with young people and to work with adults. And through those challenges, you will grow and you will become a better person.
I showed this video after we made it to a few people in Scouting, the leadership, who are very seasoned and pretty hard men. And two of them were actually crying at the end. So they recognize so much of this. And if you see that passion of these volunteers, but then also we had all these messages embedded in it, right? And we put all of that in a box and we gave that to Scout groups. and we asked them, can you please run this? What they did is we gave them a full script. So literally say this while talking. Do not deviate from the script. We trained over 800 people in recruiting new members in 50 sessions. And then we invited people to come to the Scouts groups and set them down. We talked to them according to the script. We played the videos, there were 2 videos, and then asked, would you like to be a volunteer? Now, who think that would work? Do you believe this would be a successful recruitment campaign? Yeah? Now, who believes we would actually recruit more people who are extroverted, agreeableness, and conscientious? And who doesn't believe that? Who has doubts? Yeah, you have doubts. Okay, good. So, does it work? That's the question, right? After the launch, we waited for 18 months. And what I didn't tell you is that we were sending personality questionnaires to all new recruits in Scouting. But we already did that 18 months prior to launch. And so 229 people completed the personality questionnaire when we were developing Leader Build. Then we launched Leader Build, and then we waited another 18 months, and 339 volunteers who newly joined completed the personality questionnaire. If the campaign works, we should then see an increase on average in people with being high on these personality traits from here to there. And the fun part is, we also did the same in other states with other Scouting branches that didn't implement Leader Build. And we asked them, please wait for 18 months with launching Leader Build in these other states. So these states were our control group. So we had a full experiment going on. And obviously, personality traits in these states shouldn't change over time, on average. Then we evaluated it. And what you see here is in terms of extraversion, and this is just experimental, is the state where we had Leader Build, before on the left, and after intervention on the right, actually went down slightly. Not significantly, but there was no change in terms of how extroverted the new recruits were. This is surprising. In the control states, extroversion went up for the new recruits. Completely not exposed to Leader Build. Also completely unexplainable by any reasonable person. For agreeableness, again, no change. Nothing changed anywhere. And same for conscientiousness. So our recruitment campaign failed to bring in recruits who were more extroverted, agreeableness, or conscientious. Despite everybody sort of believing that it would. And maybe you believed it too for a moment. We did get this email though, and many others like it, where the leader of Scouts, Victoria, said, the research methodology and proposal, totally amazing result. They recruited a hell of a lot more volunteers than usual with these meetings. So at least the meetings were attractive, and they just recruited more volunteers. That is a good part, and we were also very happy with the results for Scouts still, right? So there's a silver lining behind our field research project. Now, some reflections. What does this mean? In terms of just that the campaign was successful, perhaps we just made it so attractive that that little variation in traits doesn't really matter. And it just like the overall high quality of the campaign washed away the other effects of being able to attract specific people. Also, there's this strong stereotype attached to Scouts. So maybe people who just identify with these stereotypes join more often. We really had a good time working with Scouts, and we are very grateful for them for example, not rolling it out in the other states. Usually an organization would be like, well, we developed this amazing product. We're not going to wait 18 months to satisfy a few researchers. But perhaps there are just also a lot of other variables in play that determine if somebody becomes a volunteer that we didn't quite account for, and things that we haven't quite understood yet in the campaign. Also, some reflections when you consider this work, and then how is it transferable to employees and to other organizations. If you believed it worked, that's good. But then also this means that anybody can develop a proof of concept that sounds believable and convince you that it might work. So I would always ask for evidence of, let's say, an A/B test or something like we did, when somebody shows you a tool and says, this is likely to attract the right people. Also, in all our surveys, we got signals that the messages would be attracting the right people, right? But then in real life, the effects just weren't there. So I always would encourage organizations to test whatever tools you have in real life, not just test them with surveys or based on a gut feeling. And that applies to your own work too. Now, I can also see how you can apply targeted recruitment to diversity and inclusion topics. Actually, that is what tools are often used for. I have run some experiments together with my students on tools that help you improve vacancy texts and make them less biased towards one gender or the other. Do they work in practice? And so far, the results are not as positive as I would like them to be. So I don't see the effects yet. And maybe that is because we're trying to test these in real life too. Now, it also depends on many other variables, like perhaps volunteers. This effect would be just unique for volunteers, where the mission of the organization is so important that it just overpowers everything. Maybe it might be more powerful, these types of manipulations where we identify certain quotes and target use it with text when you don't have a live meeting. Because we know that asking somebody in person can also have a very strong effect. If you welcome them, you have a coffee with them, you play this presentation, they've already half committed to the role, right? And then you ask them in person. And actually, these messages might be more powerful when we just advertise via a job advertisement only and not have meetings, which is often the case for more traditional roles, and actually also with volunteering. So I really should extend this work with employees. That would be amazing too, to see if these principles would work better in that context, but I haven't yet, so I cannot tell you about that yet. That was it from me. Thank you very much for listening. I hope I inspired you and made you think.